Hi, I'm Joe Scacciaferro, and this is On Location. Okay, so I'm always about saying I've been blessed to have worked with or met some of the most amazing people in our industry. Like the classical piano player who at age 16 quit school and went to work at Caltech's Music Lab, or the 18-year-old teenager who was handpicked by Tom Oberheim to contribute to the design of the OBXa. Or how about the young engineer who designed Oberheim's first sequencer and drum machine? Oh, and if you're not familiar with Oberhiem, it's one of the companies that heavily influenced the synthesizer explosion in the early 80s. And then there's this two young engineers who started a design consulting company right out of the gate, designed the first electronic drum pads for Dyna Cord. Or how about the young guy who designed the first affordable sequencer and drum machine produced by Alesis? What about the engineer who figured out how to make a digital multi-track recordable affordable for the average musician? Remember the ADAT? And then there's the genius behind the legendary Line 6 amplifier company, the company that revolutionized guitar amps by adding digital sound modeling to an amp so that a single amp could simulate all the legendary amp sounds and effects. So what do all these people have to do with this episode? Well, it's because all these people, successes and accomplishments, all belong to one person. My friend and my hero, Marcus Ryle. Welcome, Marcus.
Hey, Joe. Nice to see you. Thanks for that lovely intro.
All I did was recite facts, and I just tried to make it better than just a list, because you have lived hundreds of people's lives. It's amazing to me.
You get a chance to accomplish quite a bit.
Yeah, I know a lot of old people who haven't even come close to one of your successes, but humbly, and which you are, you're a very humble person, because if I had those successes, I'd be bragging my ass off and I wouldn't talk to anybody.
That's funny.
The other thing that's amazing is you're also a phenomenal musician. You're a keyboard player, obviously. That, by the way, folks, that's his house. We're not talking about some museum.
It's not a bad.
That's it.
Yeah. It works. Yeah.
That is so cool. So Marcus, as you know, a lot of what I try to accomplish here is to give the newbies, the people coming in, even those who are in the industry, and I'm talking about all the industries. We talk about broadcast, we talk about theater, we talk about live events, we talk about the music performance side and recording side. And of course, my love is technology. And my technology falls in all those places. So when I finally got a chance to meet you, because I've known about you my entire career. And then when we finally got a chance to meet, I'm in awe of you. I mean, I know I sound like some gushing little 18-year-old, but I am. So talk to me about, let's go back. Let's go back. Talk to me about 16 when you decided school was enough, and you were an accomplished musician at that point, correct?
Well, I'm sure I thought I was more accomplished than I really was, but I'd been studying classical piano for about 9 years by then, and I was in a few bands and performing and recording. My then girlfriend, now wife, as a singer and keyboard player, Susan Wolf, and we were playing together in original bands as well as cover bands, and I think for me at that time, I mean, at 16, I thought my life was likely to be as a professional musician, but I'd gotten interested in electronics and technology at a very early age, and so really, I think my main decision for leaving high school, besides frankly, I just wasn't cut out for academia. But my main interests, music and music theory, electronics, computers, which were still relatively new because this was 1977. There really wasn't much being offered in high school for me to be able to really learn more about these areas I was interested in, as well as just physics and the sciences, stuff like that. So it just made sense to me to take the test. In California then they had, I think it was called the equivalency exam. So I did get a legal diploma. I jokingly call myself a high school dropout, but that's technically not correct. So I got my diploma when I turned 16, and then continued playing in bands. But then I was very fortunate that my mom had found that at Cal State Dominguez Hills, which was only about 20 minutes from where I lived, they had just put together a synthesizer studio and recording studio. And so that seemed like the perfect place for me to hang out, because I could take some classes and kind of be going to school, but also spend all my time in the studio. And not long afterwards, because they were understaffed, I ended up teaching some labs and teaching then some later some advanced synthesis, because just so happens that's kind of all I'd been doing since I was 12. So it was a natural fit for me. So.
Were you nervous? I mean, we all talk very cavalier about, oh, and then I went and did this, and then there's got to be that moment when it was like, well, damn.
I think everyone, in younger age, everyone does. There are some defining moments that happen in your life, and probably a key one in terms of nervous. I'll tell you the story about it, and that's when I was at Oberhiem. But before that, I think, when I talk to a lot of young people, I think what's important to understand is, I think, frankly, I think today too many young people are just too inside their heads. They're thinking too much instead of just being present. And I was lucky that I feel like I was treating life much the same way I think ideally you treat music, right? Like if you're performing, people will say you got to get out of your head, right? You can't be like, if you're still staring at the notes, or if you're still thinking about what you got to do and everything, you're not just letting it happen, right? And I think a lot of young people have never learned, and probably, so bombarded with social media and all these other things, to just let life happen, be in the moment, and just go with it. So many of the opportunities I had, of which I was very lucky to have so many opportunities, and very privileged to have been born into a loving family and middle class and in Los Angeles and all these other things, that certainly made these opportunities more accessible to me than that maybe to some. But still, I didn't overbrain things. It's like, wow, there's a cool studio at Dominguez Hills, just go there. And when, Tom Oberheim offered me a job, which is a whole nother long story, it's like, I especially once I learned I'd be able to get an OBX to use, which I never would have been able to afford. It just wasn't a hard decision. You just go for it and realize that you just, the most critical thing is just do things. Stop thinking about all the choices you could do and think that every decision is going to be the most critical decision. It's, within reason, of course, don't make stupid decisions, but just be doing things, because especially when you're young, you just want to experience as much as possible. That's how you're going to find your groove, find what you can do. So, so there was no grand plan for me at the beginning. I just loved tinkering with electronics. I loved synthesizers. I loved music. I loved electronics. I loved computers. And I'm just playing literally at all of those things. So then I met, it's kind of a long story, but it's documented elsewhere. Circumstances, I met Tom Oberheim when I was 18, and not long after I turned 19, he offered me a job, and it never occurred to me to work a real job. And one of my first projects there was to design the DSX, which was it was a multi-track polyphonic sequencer for Oberhiem. I helped a little with the OBXa before that, but that was pretty much a lot of that was already designed before I got there. So the DSX was like my project. And hopefully this can be a helpful lesson and story for those that are starting out. On the good side, much like I talked about, just like not being so in your head, I set out to just design the ultimate sequencer I wanted. It didn't occur to me. Now, I didn't know much about design, but I knew what I wanted as a musician, and I just started writing up a spec. It should be multi-track. It should be able to quantize. I want CV and gates as well as controlling the synth, and we have to synchronize to the drum machine, which we were developing as well. And I just wrote this spec. It's like, this is what I want. And then, I didn't think much about how am I actually going to do this. So now I had to actually go and do it. And I, not knowing better, I just jumped in. I asked. Jim Cooper was the chief engineer at Oberhiem at the time. I had done some programming, but I was still new to Z80 assembly language. I'd ask him questions. I'd look at example code, and I just started doing it. But there was a point during the development when I truly felt I was in over my head. And it was, things weren't working well. Some things I was having trouble figuring out. And I remember there was a period of time when I felt I was mortified, frankly. I never told anyone at Oberhiem this. I'm going into work every day. I'm working on this. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I'd never really completed a big project. Probably like a lot of young people, I'd started building my own synthesizer and got it 75% way done, or started doing this. So, there were lots of little projects that are like half-baked that don't really finish. So it's like, and I started really doubting myself, wondering, maybe I can't finish anything. And although we didn't have the term at the time, I seriously contemplated ghosting Oberhiem. Like, just one day, I should just not show up for work. I can't show my face right here because I don't think I'm ever going to be able to finish this. And I can't really explain how or why, but somehow just day after day, even with this dread, I just kind of kept persevering. And over time, I got over that hump and actually got this product done. And probably the most significant thing about that, and something I'd recommend others do as well, is I really remember making a real mental note to myself to say, I actually did this. I finished this. I finished something. I got to stop playing the tapes in my head that say, maybe I don't, maybe I'm never going to actually finish a project, right? How many people out there, it's like you got the unfinished song or unfinished album, the unfinished video project. You got all this stuff they haven't finished, and you can start convincing yourself that maybe I can't get anything done. And I feel fortunate that at that young age, because I was, let's see, when did it shipped in 81? I guess I was probably 20, that I paused enough to notice and go, this is kind of a big deal. I did do this. And in the 40 plus years since, there probably hasn't been a project I've been involved in that hasn't had the oh crap moment where you think, this is never going to work. We can't solve this problem. There's something, that's like this insurmountable roadblock. And I always remember that first lesson. And it's never bothered me since. I always we're going to figure it out. Figure it out. You simply have to stick with it. And I know I'm giving an awful long answer, but connected to that, something that I think is crucial, and I do think it can be learned. Some people have it inherently. Some people need to learn it. But you have to commit yourself to being tenacious. You have to have tenacity. Because if you don't stick with anything, that's the only reason things eventually get solved. People who get over these insurmountable roadblocks, they get over it because they stick with it. And you can choose not to. And maybe there are obstacles that are not worth, overcoming. But that's always a choice, right? You got to make that choice and decide, am I going to stick with this and overcome it? Tenacity is more important than brains. It's more important than talent. It's more important than experience. Tenacity is the fuel that is going to propel you through your whole life and through everything you're going to learn and everything you're going to do in your career. That's my single word of wisdom. I hope people will take away tenacity.
That's not a single word. That's some great advice. And I'm going to tie to your tenacity. It's not just it's the tenacity that you learn through, because as you stick to it, you're learning and you're learning and you're learning. So everything starts accelerating. A good friend of mine who was my bass player, God, when I was young, and then as Triple S built, which was my first business.
I remember.
And then we were having some issues, and I went through those moments when I realized I'm a funk bass player. What am I doing? Like, gear was coming at me that I had like when you said the Z80, when I first started seeing that, I was like, what, how do I even start to troubleshoot this stuff? Yeah. And I was going to bail. I did it. I mean, I was listening to you going, oh, I remember that day. I remember this day. And this bass player said to me, my guitar player said to me at one point, I said, I got to get out. I said, I can't do this anymore. And I don't want to start something else because it's going to end up being the same thing. And he pointed out to me what you just said. He said, the longer you're doing it, you're learning. So when you start your next thing, you're bringing all that with you. So you start shortening that curve and it becomes smaller and smaller. But you also just said a whole bunch of stuff that was like, I'm on the engineering side of it. I know what you were just saying is, oh my God, like eyes open, looking around. Everybody else is like, how you making out with that project? Oh, it's going great.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a couple of bugs to figure out, and I think we'll be there. Meanwhile, you just want to leave.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, what you learn through adversity can be really tremendous. So it's
way better than successes.
Yeah,
way better than successes.
Very true.
And I also want to set the stage here because I mean, a lot of the people we're talking to didn't live in the moments that we lived in, and forget that this was way cutting edge. This was unknown. We were in the wilderness at this point. So when you say drum machine today, there's thousands of them. This is a drum machine. I mean, they're everywhere.
No, absolutely right. No, so you're right. That was the era. That's before MIDI, certainly before there were computers in every home, let alone computers for making music. The LM1, Roger Lynn's brilliant first drum machine, was the only digital drum machine on the market. The Oberhiem DMX we did was the second one, which is over there. It's the DMX and DSX sitting over on the side there. And the notion, the Oberhiem system, as we called it, it was the first time that you could have a multi-track digital sequencer and a drum machine and an analog synthesizer all connected together, and they're all synchronized. And there were a lot of great records made that way. It's like, that's how, Sting composed most of Synchronicity for the Police, and just lots of examples of music that technology enabled.
Yeah. And that's something excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to stop because it's an important point. It's one of the things I've written about a lot is the chicken or the egg? Is it the technology that chases the need, or does the need follow the technology? And because I'm on the technology side of it, I say people like yourself you had that vision to build that technology, and then it gets placed in the hands of other artists who now their minds get exploded.
Sure. But it's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, the way I see it is, in the end, the what's going to determine whether a product, a technology is great for music is going to be the musician, not the technologist, right? And I mean, there are plenty of amazing examples where musicians are using technology in a completely unintended way, right? I mean, you think about how the turntable became a musical instrument. That was people being creative with the technology. Or when the 808, which I remember when the 808 came out and it was not successful and people didn't think it sounded very good until some musicians put the 808 in context and suddenly it's like the greatest sound there was, right? So when I think about, I'll be honest, I believe that technologists sometimes get too much credit for amazing products when the reason we think a Fender Rhodes sounds amazing, and the reason that an Oberheim synth sounds amazing, and all of these things that we think of as legendary, amazing sounds, they are solely because of the context that the musician put it into. By itself, it makes sound. It makes a sound, but when we hear that first note of Rush's Tom Sawyer, we go, that's big. That's awesome, right? Or you hear Joe Zawinul playing Birdland on an Oberheim 4 voice, and or you hear Chick Corea on a Fender Rhodes. Now these things are magical, and the sound means so much to us.
Right.
It doesn't happen without that context, and that's why actually when someone makes a new instrument that it might even make a new sound, sometimes people aren't quite sure. It's like, well, do I like it? Do I not like it? Is this an important piece of history? Yeah. I think it's the musical context is going to decide that for us. The musician is going to drive what becomes great.
Yeah. So, I'm sitting here thinking of a million examples, like pitch shifting. Pitch shifting wasn't supposed to be an effect. It was supposed to fix bad singing.
Great example, right? Yeah, auto-tune was supposed to be hidden in the background, and it's like it turned into a musical effect. That's a great example, and there's so much like that. So it's a great symbiotic relationship. I'd say that when I'm focusing on designing product, I like to think of myself as a type of artist. Right. I mean, I am creating something. I'm using creativity and imagination to try to come up with something. But what we're coming up with is, here's a tool that a different artist, a musician or producer or whatever, that they're going to use that tool, and how does it enable their art? That's right. That's the thing. I mean, I talk about, Photoshop is an amazing tool, right? Me with Photoshop doesn't make me really any better than the stick figures I can draw, because I'm just not an artist, right? Someone who's got a great artistic eye can take a tool like Photoshop and do unbelievable things with it, right? So that's maybe just another analogy of it. You're right.
I like the idea that you said, that symbiotic. They happen, and then somebody has to know how to do that. And since we're a very unique piece, obviously I get excited about it because we were there. I was there standing there. And I remember working in this little music store, and I had no business working as a tech because I was a hack. I didn't know what I was in bands, and something was broken, and I'm Italian, so I'm supposed to know how to fix things. So I would take it apart, and hopefully I could put it together. A lot of times I couldn't. And anyway, I got this gig working in this little tiny music store. And coincidentally, they had hired a keyboard salesperson who was also around the same age, who was technical, was DeFuria. And when Dave Friend brought the ARP into this store, and I'm looking at this, and I said, it was alien to, and it was alien to musicians. But to me, being technical, I went, oh, I know what an oscillator is. Oh, I know what a filter is. Oh, this is a voltage controlled filter. Everything made sense. And
Right.
when I finally had the opportunity, because I became authorized to service ARP, I was like one of two in the U.S. And I had met
Mhm.
Alan R. Perlman, who was ARP, and we
Yeah.
talked about that. Is how come you didn't make your front panel musical? Like you made it
Right.
technical, but you were selling it to musicians, and
Yeah.
but it was so much on the front end of everything that
Right.
nobody had even gotten to that point of marketing it yet. And then
No, that's
musicians just adapt it to the words.
right. And then that feedback loop happens, right? You see, it's like, well, musicians want more real time control, right? And so, the notion of having, add aftertouch and pedals and things,
Yeah.
the evolution, is very much fed by how people are using the instruments. So,
Okay. So let's move on because we
yeah.
could spend, that's one interview of one person. But as I started in the beginning, there's a lot of people here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
let's go to fast forward. And that's not me racing into the beginning. Fast forward is the name of your consulting company.
Yes. That
And that
was
blossomed a pile of stuff.
it
How
did. That was
scary was that?
1985. Well, that was so at that time. So I was all of 24 now, but been at Oberheim almost 5 years. Oberheim, I had no business training, and I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I could sense that there was some angst about the business. Obviously, I learned much more after the fact. That Tom was going through, as many companies do, being undercapitalized. Having a lot of inventory and have great sales, but you borrow money from the bank to buy parts so you can build the next product. And our Matrix 12 development had been delayed by a couple months, and in May of '85, Oberheim had to file for bankruptcy. 5 weeks before that, I quit Oberheim. I didn't know that the demise was just around the corner, but it felt like it was time for me to move on. I was just interested in synthesizers, certainly my first love, obviously, but I was interested in more things, as was Michel Douadic, an engineer from Oberheim, and Susan, my wife, and the three of us decided to start a company called Fast Forward Designs to basically do what we loved, which is design products, but remove the financial risk.
That's
We
smart.
thought if we designed products for other companies, then we don't have any inventory. We don't need any capital. We just
All
need to
right.
be smart, hopefully, and we get to do the part we like, and let's let someone else build it and sell it and market it and so on. So it was a very simple premise that was basically, well, if we could do that and do what we like doing and still make a living, that seems like that could work pretty well. And, very fortuitous that an opportunity knocked literally within days of me leaving Oberheim. And that was that this German company, Dyna Cord, who was being distributed in the US by some other ex-Oberheim employees, which is, Jafar and Woody Moran. That's how they knew of us. This Dyna Cord company wanted to make a digital drum set and was looking for people who could do that. And so we met with them, and like before, without thinking much about it, I mean, we'd never done a digital audio product. Up to that time, everything we'd done was analog synthesizers. And of course
Right.
they said, well, could you make a digital drum set? And we said, of course. That's kind of, I think that advice happens a lot in acting. I've never done any acting, but they say when you go to an audition for a role, it's like whatever they ask you, it's like, well, can you ride a horse or can you do this? The answer should always be yes, right?
Always
Because
yes.
it's
Always
always yes.
yes.
You want the gig, and lo and behold, and that was an interesting another moment, like the DSX moment. We said yes, started designing. You couldn't buy an off the shelf DSP at that time, certainly not at any affordable price, or we weren't going to do custom chips. So started literally building, and microprocessors were certainly not fast enough to do digital audio. So started building a state machine to be able to read memory out and spit it out a DAC and so on. And we made our first prototype, and it sounded awful. And because we knew, and this maybe, I don't know if this is it, the explanation might be a little too technical. We could get in the weeds if we wanted to, but it was a basic issue of how we were trying to use shared memory for all the drum sounds to come out of a single DAC. But if you wanted to change the pitch, we would have to skip or add samples, basically, because we had to read out of memory always at the same rate, because all the voices, the drum voices, were coming out of one DAC. And which is a technique similar to how the first drumulator from Emu worked, which had the same bad artifacts when you change pitch. Ironically, that's now viewed as a good sound, right? I mean, or it's certainly an identifiable sound. But we heard that, we said, well, this will never work. We're going to have to figure out. Again, we were stuck. We have to figure out another way, and we came up with the idea of doing essentially through analog, a linear interpolation to get in between the samples, and it worked fabulously, and it was a good time. But sorry, too much detail. We started fast forward.
Let me interrupt you, because you said two things that I want to make sure I have time to hit on. One,
okay.
You started a business with no business experience.
Yes.
So that was another one of those. Let's just do it, or did you?
Let's just do it. To me, it had very little risk because, my wife and I, we didn't have kids yet. We didn't have a lot of responsibility, financial responsibility. We owned a small house, but we could, we didn't have big debt or anything like that. And we were still playing in bands. I was doing a lot of session work too, because in the 80s, I ended up also, helping with a bunch of albums and stuff like that. So we had other forms of income. So it wasn't all that risky to be able to just say, well, let's just give this a try. Then I guess also I may be fairly lucky that my intuitive sense for business turns out to be pretty good, because as I mentioned, we met Dyna Cord right away and said, yes, we can design this. But there was a but. The but is we've just started. We have nothing. We have no development tools, no office, we've nothing, right? And this was long before, working remote was even a concept or anything. And so they flew us to Germany. We gave them our pitch of what we could do. And I said, here's how we need to work it. First, you have to pay us a monthly development fee. That's essentially how we're going to make a living, right? On top of that, we need computers, a plotter, software to lay out circuit boards, development system for the firmware. There's just a long list of equipment. I made a list, and I remember, and this would be in 1985, it was about $60,000 worth of equipment. Wow. And I said, so here's what we need. I said, you guys can own this. So it's your capital equipment, but we don't have the money. So you need to buy this. And the third component, which ended up being very fortuitous, is I said, we also want a royalty on the product. That basically we framed it that the development fee is really just kind of so we can survive. But the real money-making opportunity for us is the royalty. And my pitch was basically, this is in both our best interest, because if you're paying us a huge royalty check, that means you're selling a ton of product and you're happy too. So, we decided we want 2% of your sales as a royalty. And they just said yes to all of that.
Wow.
So we were in business just like that, had all this development equipment. Sue found a little office in the Marina Del Rey. We were on the second floor above a boat repair place, just a little shop. And she named the company too. She came up with the idea, Fast Forward Designs. And Michelle and I just started designing away. It's like we were essentially in business and making a salary from the first day and didn't have to invest a penny to start the company. So
oh, good. I'm going to put a disclosure. I'm going to put a disclosure up on here. Everybody, this does not happen.
This doesn't happen.
This isn't how it works. You don't make a decision on Tuesday and be in business on Friday with an income.
So typically it doesn't happen. But again, I think, you know, taking every opportunity, being tenacious, being in the moment with life, all these things. I've been accused of having a charmed life, and I don't dispute that. Some people may believe in a higher power, or may believe in karma, or may believe in how the universe works to make good things happen. My personal belief, there's no question there's an aspect of it that's completely out of your control, right? If you at a young age get a life-threatening disease or something like that. I mean, there's lots of stuff that's really unfortunate that does happen to people. But a big part of luck is just being there, being at every opportunity, having, networking with as many people as you can and everything. That's how things can happen, right? You're just increasing your odds, right? If you buy 0 lottery tickets, you're guaranteed not to win the lottery. If you buy 1 lottery ticket, well, then you've got that 1 in 200 million chance or whatever, right? I mean, the lottery is probably a bad example, but clearly, if you buy 100 lottery tickets, your odds improve by 100 times.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So if you're just thinking about, boy, the only thing I can do in my life is this one career path. And if this one thing doesn't happen, it's like, if I don't, get a job with Steven Spielberg, my life is over. It's like, I've got my one thing, right? It's like, no, it needs to be everything. You need to buy a lot of lottery tickets, not literally, please.
Yeah.
But figuratively. And it's amazing how much good luck can come your way because you're just in the game that much more.
Yeah, and you snuck a word in there. And you went right over it. Networking.
Networking is crucial. And again, I know that some people, I'm lucky in that I am a natural extrovert. So I'm very comfortable to just talk to people. For some people, I know that's much harder, but it's like anything can be learned. I like to think of humans as we're really not that complicated. We are pattern recognition machines, right? If you brush your teeth every morning, you probably don't even have to think about that anymore. But there was probably a moment in time when you were a child and your parents are telling you to brush your teeth where you're like, oh, Mom, I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to. It's like we get at patterns, and your brain doesn't care if it's a good pattern or a bad pattern, right? You can get some real bad habits. Brain doesn't care. Here's this bad habit you're going to do every day. The more you do it, the more your brain is programmed that this is the pattern, right? So if you have trouble networking and talking to people, you have to go out and do it. And a year later, you're probably going to find this. I don't know why that bothered me. This is like no big deal. What's the worst thing that can happen? Someone's going to say, "Get out of here." Okay, big deal.
Yep. So yeah, what you're saying is the key. I have said that. I mean, it's anybody who's worked for me or with me understands the one thing. If you're not, you have to be nervous to be good because that means you care. But if you think you're going to get to a point at which it doesn't, you have to get to the point that when you get really, like if I'm doing a Super Bowl or I'm doing, a major stadium tour or something at that level, you're like, oh my God, if I F this up, I'm done. I'll never work again. My career's over. My life's over. And then you have to calm yourself down and realize, no, that's not the case. I've had those moments. I've blown out the sound system at Carnegie Hall. I've crushed, a Nova lights on a live television set. I'm still working. I'm still here. Yeah. You have to balance those two. And you're saying that very articulately.
Well, thanks. it is key. And I'd say another thing that has served me well, and a lot of this, for people maybe at the beginning of their careers, these aren't things like I've just known my whole life. I'm
Right.
explaining
Good point.
my perspective now, being able to look back and recognize what were the things that worked out, right? So I didn't know at the time, but I recognize now one of the things that helped me a lot is that I was able to separate the emotional and practical components of those fears. I think fundamentally, the emotional side, which I described, I was certainly an emotional state at Oberhiem when I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can finish this. Maybe I need to ghost them and so on. That worry and panic, I don't believe that serves you. In fact, for many people, if that becomes a pattern, that can be something that actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's why you're going to fail, because you believe that's the patterns that you have. But at the same time, you don't want to be flippant and not think about that at all. Like you're saying, if you're doing a Super Bowl and you're like, yeah, whatever happens, happens, and you didn't do some basic homework of preparation of like, I better make sure I've got some spare cables, and I better make sure I got redundancy here, and I've got, right, you do your homework. So, I call, those things, being prepared, that's critical thinking, and the emotional part actually can cloud your ability to do that. So you want to channel, instead of worry, which is an emotional state, or panic at an extreme, you want to shift that to be an appropriate level of concern, having an appropriate level. Urgency is not a word that I consider emotional. Panic is the emotional side. Urgency is not. What's the first thing they say? It's like if the airplane loses oxygen, they say, don't panic, right? Pull down your oxygen mask, put yours on first before you do your transplant. Is that an urgent, critical situation? Yes. The panic, the emotional side of it is going to get you in trouble. It's going to cause you to make bad decisions, right? You give yourself 5 seconds of panic, and then get that out of the way and work the problem. And just, you gotta be able to be over here. And if you can do that, if you can get out of your head on the emotional sides of those things. And I know it's easier said than done for some people. Remove self-doubt. If you imagine, this may be getting too philosophical, but if you imagine, I call myself a pragmatic idealist. I like to set very lofty goals, like, sure, let's be the number one guitar amp company in the world. And it's silly kind of thing to imagine, but these don't bother me because I've never considered myself a failure if I don't achieve the lofty goals. I'd be a failure if I don't create the best possible outcome. So what I stand in is that any goal I set for myself, I accept that goal might not be possible. I can't know it. I can't know if it's truly possible until I'm done. Whatever it could be. I could say, I want to run a 4-minute mile. Right now, I'd say that's pretty impossible. But, but just, you could say, all right, but that's a goal. It's a lofty goal. Now be pragmatic about what are the steps I should take that would get me as close to that. If I then someday achieved a 5-minute mile, just to be absurd, I mean, that would be amazing to me, right? And it can be a win. You can recognize that if your goal becomes, instead of a specific tangible thing, if your goal is, I want to be able to look back and know I created the best possible outcome I could have. That's a win, right? Maybe that meant we were number 2 in amplifiers, or maybe, a product didn't sell as much as you'd want, but you did your very best on making that product. So maybe that's just what the market size was, because you don't know. You don't know.
No, you're oh my God. This is such great advice from someone who's accomplished so much. So it's advice of value that you have to pay attention.
Well,
Let's talk about. Let me talk about
Yeah.
line 6 for a minute,
Okay.
because
All right.
I mean I don't want to go fast forward. There's just so much stuff, and I have one quick question with that, and,
Yeah, sure.
and give me a short answer on this.
All right.
Was most of those designs someone coming to you with a vision, with a concept, and you had to execute? Or did you go to someone and say, hey, we've got this idea and I think it's a perfect product for you?
It was all the above. I mean, as I said, we started the company. It was Dyna Cord wanted a digital drum set. We didn't think of doing that. Then we had to think of how can we make a really cool digital drum set. Some products, obviously we had a keyboard background. So us going to Alesis and saying we want to design some keyboards, the whole notion of like the Quadrasynth and QS series, that would be from us. Other things, when we did the Quadraverb, we never made a digital reverb before. So it was crucial to be able to learn from Keith Barr at Alesis, the founder of Alesis, how he did the MIDI verb and its success, and kind of see how we could build upon that. But we defined what it is, right? We wanted it to be multi-effects and have a display and so on. So
Right.
we would typically define the product. But there was a lot of collaboration for sure.
I was just going to say, that's the word I was looking
Yeah.
for.
That's
was
crucial. That's
Everything
that's
you
another
did was
thing that,
collaborative.
yeah. I mean, I won't quote it well, but Seth Godin has a great book called Lynchpin, and he describes, if you think about it, a linchpin being someone who's like essentially. He describes the attributes of that, and he characterizes a label on people who have like 2 of these 3 attributes. So you'll have to read the book to get it, but one of them is an artist, which we generally think of as a positive thing, but I think we all know the negative connotation of when someone's labeled an artist. It usually means they're kind of difficult or moody or something, and some fit into that category, and some are very difficult to collaborate with because they have their vision and they just want to execute their vision, right? It's about them. I mean, I think you kind of almost have to have some narcissistic tendencies to be that type of artist. But that doesn't play well when it comes to collaboration. If what your focus is you want to make the very best product, and you don't care whose idea it is, and you don't care who does this part or that part. It's like, in the music example, it's like when you've seen some bands that just, it's unbelievable what these bands can create, and they're clearly, it's more than the sum of the parts. And that's what true collaboration looks like, right? Just bouncing ideas off each other, and who wrote that riff or this, like, I don't even remember. Who even cares? We're a band, and we just made this incredible song.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I feel real fortunate. I want the best possible outcome. So I don't care whose idea it is, or who gets the credit or whatever. It takes a team, and collaboration is an awesome way to get amazing results. So in fact, to connect it to the very lovely introduction that you gave, I was present. I was Forrest Gump present in all the things you described. I certainly did contribute my part of it, but none of those things would have been possible without all the other people that helped work on that stuff.
You and I, it's so amazing how similar we are in so many different areas. One of the things I've said, and I still continue to say it, and it's not me being humble, is I'm embarrassed about my Emmys. I truly am, because my name's on it, but you're acknowledging this product, you're acknowledging this art, you're acknowledging this show. Well, this show, maybe you liked the lighting, maybe you liked the sound, maybe you liked the camera work, maybe you liked the editing, maybe you liked the open, maybe you liked I don't know what got you, but because I'm the producer or the general manager, I get the accolades for it, and I hate it. I truly do, because of what you just said. It's a collaborative art. If I was a painter and I sat there and I painted, the Mona Lisa, okay, give me the accolades. I did that. I took a canvas and I put my brush to paper, and that was what it was. I'm running out of time, and I do want to touch on line 6, because that's another one of my absolute, astonished that no one got that before that.
Yeah.
Tell me about going into line 6 and how, not so much the actual evolution, because that story's been told, but what were you thinking at that moment? Like you just said, I want to make the best amp company. So tell me about just where you were at and how you jumped off.
There were a few things that converged that really created the catalyst of that. One is we'd spent 10 years as Fast Forward Designs developing products for Alesis and DigiDesign and other companies. And that really gave us an amazing opportunity to be students of how these various businesses were being run. So we'd had another 10 years of education, which gave us more insight than we'd had when in the days of seeing the end of Oberhiem. That gave us some confidence that maybe we could do our own products. Then additionally, it just felt in the early 90s that guitar players, in my opinion, were really being left behind in the technological evolution. Keyboard players, we had everything we could want at the touch of a button. And now hard disk recording was starting. Plugins had been introduced in the 90s, and this notion that as a producer, you could do anything. And guitar players were still spending all day trying to get one sound and then dealing with, buzzes and hums from their pedal board hookup. And just like every time I do a session date with a guitar player, I think there just has to be a better way. So then there were two other factors which are maybe worth noting. We had I mentioned we designed 40 products for Alesis. It was a great relationship, and of course, the things like the ADAT and Quadriverb and the drum machines, they were pretty big sellers, big success, and generating a lot of royalty revenue for us. And we were kind of used to every time we'd bring a product idea to Alesis, the answer was always yes. And fairly early on in ADAT, we recognized that it had a maximum life of maybe 10 years. That tape was going to be the format for about 10 years because, an SVHS cassette tape was 2 gigabytes of storage for $10 when 2 gigabyte hard drives didn't even exist yet. So it was an economy. Clearly, we knew with Moore's law, at some point, hard disk recording is going to be the way to go. So we proposed to Alesis the whole transition of tape to hard disk and digital mixers and what we thought the studio of the future would be in the, we did that in probably 93 or so. And they said, we don't really want to do that. We're good. We're good with tape and so on. And we realized, wow, that could be a problem. That might be, that ultimately could be the end of Alesis, which in fact it was many years later. But we thought we better take more control of our own destiny. Maybe it's time to do products. So we had the income already, and revenue stream was going to continue. We believe we knew the customer we wanted to address. Guitar players were being underserved. We'd learned about running business and felt we had a good idea now of what to do and not to do in running a business. And there was a fourth piece, probably a little too much detail, but I'd found a DSP part that Texas Instruments in Japan, and only available in Japan, had made because surround sound was just starting, and they'd made a chip to be used like in home receivers. But it was the first kind of affordable off-the-shelf DSP part that we thought might have enough power to do this modeling idea. So all those converged, and in 96, we launched our brand. I mean, we were still the same company. We were still called Fast Forward Designs. Line 6 was our brand. that quickly just kind of blew up. And so pretty quickly, Line 6 we made that the name of the company, and it just, it did okay.
It changed the industry. I mean, it literally did. It was, I know I jumped on it as soon as I saw it.
I appreciate it. Maybe there's a good example there, and you let me know if we don't have time for another story on Line 6.
Go ahead, we have to. I'm already decided I'm going to split this, so we have plenty of time.
Okay. So you talk about collaboration. So we've done the first Line 6 product was the Axis 212, $1,000 212 100-watt amp that had modeling in it, right? So that was the first modeling guitar amp, and we patented that, and it did pretty well. And then we came out with the Flexstone, which is a little more affordable combo, and which did fine too. And then, I thought, we really should make like a processor, and because it's really the same technology, but this would be really great for recording. You don't need a power amp and speakers. You should go direct, and let's just capture the whole thing. Which some who know the history of this will realize that's the pod. And I happen to have one right here. The first generation.
I happen to have one right there.
Oh, good.
I have one right there.
Excellent. So, but what's intriguing? So I drew this up, and every knob you see here, every feature of this product, I have in my first drawing. The difference? My first drawing was a single rack, because that just seemed logical to me. We'll just make a little rack box. That's how you record. Done. We know how to do this. This would be really cool, right? Thankfully, there were a handful of people at the company who were like, no, we can't do a rack. If we do a rack, it's just going to get lost with all the other rack products. And at that time, late 90s, kind of the era of big racks, some were saying that's kind of going down. That's not in fashion. Basically, no one's going to notice the thing. It's not a good idea. So I take no credit at all for what this looks like. It didn't even occur to me. And I'm so grateful that there are people in the company going, no, we need to make something that people are going to recognize. And someone also added, it's like, you know what? It should not have any straight lines. What an interesting idea, right? It didn't occur to me. They said this digital was viewed as, if you said digital in guitar, digital meant cold in the 90s, right? Digital is sterile. It's not like a warm tube amp or anything. And it's like, we've gone to such trouble in the modeling to make this sound organic. There's this notion of this should have an organic shape. It should not look digital. I'm not trying to make it look like a tube, but just look different. Again, I'm going to quote Seth Godin again. Actually, you know what? I stand corrected. Linchpin Linchpin is Seth Godin as well. Or is it Malcolm Gladwell? Well, someone will have to look up my book references. My memory might not be so good. But Seth Godin did write a book called Purple Cow that I read later. And just this whole notion in marketing and products of just what happens when, if you were driving down the road and you saw a purple cow in a field, chances are you'd pull over and you'd stop and look at this, because you don't typically see a purple cow. And you probably tell your friends about it and take a picture of it. It's like, you're not going to believe what I saw on the highway. There was a purple cow, right? This was our purple cow, because people saw this and you went, what the hell is that? What does it do? I'm intrigued. You wouldn't think that if you just saw yet another single rack device. And of course, the product had to sound good, and it had to, meet the needs of musicians, everything. But I would argue that if we hadn't made it this weird shape, Line 6 may never have had the success that it did.
Wow.
And if I wasn't comfortable with collaboration, if I was being an artist and only believed in my own vision, then we never would have done this. So
nice.
I guess it's just
hold that up again.
Yeah.
Hold that up again. And when I saw that, I'm telling you, when I first saw that, you know what that looked like to me? And I think that's what drew me in. An actual artist palette. It has that same.
That's interesting.
And it just spoke to me.
it's almost like a Rorschach test because it hits different people differently. Some people saw it like a tractor seat, and others saw it as a kidney bean. I mean, we actually often, this is usually called, we just refer to this as the kidney bean, right? It's the bean pod.
It's that.
Stuff.
Now
But
you
you're
just
right.
now
It is
you just
kind of like an artist's palette.
That's exactly. But now you just changed it in my head. No, thank you. And now it's a bean. It went from this
Now
cool
it's a bean.
piece of art. Now it's a bean.
It's a bean.
No, it's a great,
It's a bean.
yeah, great product, great ideas.
It was a phenomenal run. I mean, we sold millions of pods and millions of guitar amps, and it's remarkable. And I couldn't be prouder. Line 6 continues to flourish and has done fabulously as part of Yamaha, and the Helix is an amazing product family, and it's all great. And you've been speaking from the industry and speaking from the user musician side. You're a tremendous gift to the industry. I'm so glad I was able to travel that path with you. Timeline wise, I was at every one of those junctures doing something on the East Coast. But Exactly.
yeah, thank you so much for being you. It's just great, everything about you. So I'm done gushing. I have to say goodbye and thank you for an exceptional time. And at some point, there's so much more, and I want to bring you back at some point and talk a little bit more about everything and where you are now and what you're up to, because you did just finish another product and you have another milestone that we haven't even touched on. And I can't open that Pandora's box right now. So I invite everybody to go check it out. Marcus isn't hard to find. His works are all over the place. His fingerprints are on everything. Everybody's written about him. Everybody's talked about him. And if they haven't, you F them because they don't know what they're doing. Marcus, thank you. Say hello to your family. God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much, Joe. This is great. Take care.
Bye-bye.